Yo, we made it to episode 4 of Past, Present, Future. Not a milestone, you say? Well, it is to me. I'm Griffin, your host. Thanks for hanging out. Past, Present, Future, Comics We Love is a comics recommendation / discussion podcast where I sit down with a guest and we talk about our favorite books from the past, the present, and the future. We get to share what we love with each other and you at home. Joining me for this episode, pop culture writer for Slashfilm and more, and member of the real Effin Nerdcast, my pal Jamie. Jamie, how's it going?
Hello.
I'm really excited to have you on. I know that we've been trying to do this for a while. It kept getting moved, so thank you for being able to sit down with me. I really appreciate the time.
No problem. I'm really excited too.
Let's start with your comics origin. What got you into comics?
The thing that got me into comics is actually my past pick, but I'll go over the full origin story, which is when I was 16, I think, somebody in high school, she loaned me volume 7 of Sandman, which is called Brief Lives, and I had never read a comic before, and I read it, and like by the end of it I was in tears. Like I was just a mess, even though I had no idea what was going on because it was volume 7. I just loved it. And then I wound up tracking down all the other volumes at like various stores. I wound up reading them all out of order. And then once I had them all, I went back and read them all in order. And then I basically got really obsessed with Neil Gaiman. I read like every Neil Gaiman comic I could find and his books. But then I also had read that he was a huge fan of this guy named Alan Moore. So then I read all of Alan Moore's stuff. And then obviously that's like a great introduction.
So it's like you started right at the top of the food chain there. That's awesome.
I know. Yeah. And then I was like around the same time so it started off like kind of slow. Maybe this is too much information, but I got clean like after high school and I couldn't focus on books at all. I like could not read books. And so I got really, really into comics because something about the way that they were broken down into like words and pictures was just so much easier for my brain to wrap around. And once I got into comics, like I didn't read like a regular book for many years after that. So aside from Gaiman and Moore, then I got like really into some superhero stuff. I think like the first superhero stuff I read was like X-Men stuff and Daredevil and Batman. Those were like my initial faves. And then I just got into, non-superhero comics and really just started reading everything I could get my hands on, and comics just became this like huge refuge for me.
Like you said, the combination of the sequential art and the words and the way that it can kind of transport you so effortlessly into different concepts and worlds is what makes comics to me. It's like the way you can play with time and perspective. It's just it's such an interesting way to tell a story.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and there's so many things you can do in comics that you just can't do in any other medium.
And we see it time and time again with all these adaptations.
Oh yeah, it's like with Saga, like that's probably never going to get adapted because how can you possibly?
It would have to be an animated series, and Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples would have to have some sort of directive creative control, otherwise it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And even then, I'd still prefer the comic.
Yeah, definitely. So glad it's back.
Oh my god. We can't talk spoilers on it.
No, I know we shouldn't spoil it, but yes, I read it.
Made my heart so full. Heart so full.
Same. I got so pumped. That reread got me so pumped. It like broke my heart all over again. And then I was just ready for that new issue.
So you said that Sandman is your first comic and your past pick. So why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, it follows Dream of the Endless primarily, but also his siblings, which are Destiny, Death, Destruction, Desire and Despair, and Delirium, who used to be Delight. But then as the human race evolved, so did she. But it's really just a lot about, it's fascinating the way that Gaiman sort of he weaves the story of the Endless throughout history and mythology and other worlds, and just it's this like epic story that sort of like defies classification and is really difficult to explain. Like I struggle to even talk about it because I love it so much. And I've actually like been doing a reread. I mean, there was like a time when I used to reread this annually. I mean, the whole series. I remember when I went to school in Illinois, the only books I brought with me were just all of those volumes. But yeah, I mean, and so many fantastic artists worked on it. I mean, volume 7, the first volume that I ever read, was primarily drawn by Jill Thompson, who I still love so much. But so many other good artists too, like Colleen Doran, Mark Hempel, Mike Allred, Sam Keith. I mean, there were just like so many fantastic artists who worked on it. And I don't know, man, it makes me feel so many things. It makes me laugh and cry and think and dream. And I've read it so many times at so many different points in my life. And I'm always so surprised by like how differently it lands for me, you know, depending on like where I'm at in my life, you know. And I feel like I learned a lot of important life lessons from it at like a pretty young age, like the price of getting what you want is getting what you once wanted, stuff like that. Just some really good stuff.
So Sandman is a preeminent work, you know, and as someone who discovered comics with Sandman, what do you think has made it stick around the way that it has? Like, why does it have that lasting impact?
I think Vertigo, like, I mean, I know Sandman started out, it was like DC and then it was Vertigo, right? But I think so much of Vertigo kind of like redefined what comics were during that time period. And I think Sandman was like a huge part of that. Because I think that when people thought about comics, they thought like a specific thing, you know, like they thought like superhero comics or like books for kids or whatever, and comics have evolved into so much more. And I just feel like Vertigo and Sandman in particular were kind of like at the forefront of that. Also, you know, its themes are timeless, and it's like I said, it's just such an epic story. I don't think it's aged really, really well. I was thinking that while rereading it too, and it's interesting because I know that the Netflix adaptation is going to take place in modern times, you know, because it took place in the present then too, but that was quite a while ago now. So they're going to modernize it a bit, which is interesting. But a lot of times when you read stuff from a while ago, it doesn't age that well. But this I think has aged pretty great.
I would have to agree. I've never read all of Sandman. Sandman is like a huge hole in my comics knowledge.
Yeah.
Our friend Nicole was nice enough to lend me the first 2 volumes. And back when I had first started college, our school library had the Absolute Sandman Volume 1, and I read through it then. But I never read past that. And other comics from that era, the narration style and the info dumping, the exposition dumping is unreadable for me personally. And Sandman doesn't suffer from that at all. Gaiman's narration style, his voice carries so well, like you said, into the modern day. And it feels like it could have been written at any time in the last 25 years.
Agreed. And I do think part of that is also just the way that it is woven throughout like real life history and mythology and all these different things that make it sort of feel as though the Endless have always been there, which, you know, in the story they have.
It's such an interesting, like, Watchmen creates its own world, and it does literary things in a comic book realm, but Gaiman kind of achieves some of those same heights, and he incorporates the DC universe, the superhero universe, into that, and it's such a different look than other crossovers of the time didn't do anything like that. All right, so let me pull us forward in time from Sandman to one of my favorite works from who I believe to be one of the most prolific crime comics teams of all time, the inimitable Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
Yes.
Kill or Be Killed was a 20-issue look at the rise and fall of a vigilante in the real world from Image Comics. It combines a Punisher-type character with a Dexter-like dark passenger motivation and a thematic conviction in the wrongness of the world, its lack of justice and satisfying resolutions. Our main character, Dylan, initially appears to be an average college student with the kind of normal issues and complications one expects from a person in that space. Slowly, we see that image crumble as Dylan survives a suicide attempt only to be possessed by a demon. The demon explains that since he spared Dylan's life, he's owed the life of an evil man monthly or Dylan will die. Though initially reluctant, he grows into the role, while we learn that his sanity may never have been as solid as we initially thought. Brubaker's motivational shell game, the back-and-forth uncertainty about the existence of the entity, plays out for Dylan and the reader through a running first-person narration that gives an increasingly uncomfortable and honest look at his inner thoughts, with twists and developments all the way to the very last page. Brubaker employs a recurring narrative device, a cold open where we see a key moment or act of violence and then spend a few issues reverse engineering that scenario, seeing the characters move into position. As readers, we are always playing catch-up, dragged along by a disturbed narrator, content in his role as, at least in his mind, a killer for good, even as he clearly loses more and more control over his life. That shared uncertainty builds tension and keeps the pages turning, never allowing the reader to settle into a fixed rhythm. Artist and longtime collaborator Sean Phillips purportedly didn't read ahead as scripts were delivered, finding out the arcs and fates of characters issue to issue alongside the reader.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like that had to have added to the air of dangerous possibility that permeates all 4 volumes. And there's no way to escape that feeling that you don't know what's coming next. Phillips' art is always instantly recognizable, noir cityscapes with rough edges and hard, firm characters. The team is responsible for one of the deepest catalogs in comics. Criminal, Fatale, Scene of the Crime, Reckless, The Fade Out, Pulp. They've written the book on sequential crime fiction. Which one?
Sleeper. That's what got me into them.
I've never read Sleeper. What is Sleeper?
Oh my God, you have to. That's what got me into them. That's the first thing I ever read. And then after that, everything that came out after that, I just read everything.
Oh man, I always get excited whenever there's like a new Brubaker Phillips thing to check out. So that's going on.
This is a really old Brubaker Phillips thing, but no, read it. It's so good. I'm sorry, go on though.
They've written the book on sequential crime fiction and then they've elevated it again and again and again. And Killer Be Killed stands neck and neck with their best. Fans of Taxi Driver and the aforementioned Dexter and Punisher will, I think, find a lot to love here. You said in our pre-show discussion that you hadn't finished this, but you had dove in. What did you think of what you read?
I mean, I haven't read it since it was coming out, which was like a little while ago now, so I don't remember it that well, but I remember I loved it. Like, I love everything that they do. I told you I missed an issue, and then I like didn't get it, and then I just fell off and never went back to it. But now that you talked about it this way, I'm obviously gonna pick it back up again and let you know what issue I'm missing so that you can loan it to me. But yeah. I really loved what I read. I mean, like, I don't think they've written anything that I haven't loved. I think my favorite, I mean, like I said, Sleeper is what got me into them, but I think Criminal is probably my fave. I really, really love Criminal.
Brubaker just gets how to write for Phillips, and Phillips knows how to translate his ideas and his worlds. He manages to make the narration underline the themes, and that's like something that I look for in like a truly great comic. Jamie, what current comic has grabbed you for this episode?
I had kind of a hard time with this because there are quite a few that I'm enjoying right now. You know, I'm loving Nightwing, and I'm loving Zdarsky's Daredevil, and I'm loving that new Moon Knight book. I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff, but I kind of couldn't choose. And then I had subscribed to, is it Tynion?
Tynion. As far as I know, I've said it wrong every other time we've done this show. So
yeah, I subscribed to his Substack and I started reading Blue Book, which mostly, I mean, I like Tynion a lot, like what I've read of his, but I honestly, a lot of what drew me to Blue Book was Mike Oeming's art, because Mike is a friend of mine. We met a super long time ago, back when I worked at Comic Relief, which was in like the very early 2000s. But I was a huge fan of his art before that, and I'm still a fan. And like on his social media, just seeing like the images for it, I was like, I really, really want to read that. And so far, I mean, I think it's really, really cool. I think the last bit that came out was chapter 8. It's Blue Book, Betty and Barney Hill. I don't know if they're going to do, and I should probably read all the newsletters I get, because that fact, like these things were probably revealed about if they're going to do other UFO stories. But this one, it's a true account of an American couple who claimed they were abducted by aliens in 1961 while driving through rural New Hampshire. And it was the first widely publicized report of its kind in the US.
Anything to get out of New Hampshire.
Yeah, right. I do think abduction stories are pretty interesting, and so far I'm pretty into it, but it is tiny increments, so it's like I feel like just when I'm starting to be like, ooh, what's gonna happen, then it's over and I have to wait for the next one. But yeah, like I said, I love the art, and especially the color palette I think is really, really interesting. So far it's grabbed me, but I really want to know what happens, and I have to keep waiting in between these small bits of stories, which we were talking about, before, that Substack is a very different experience than, but it's all different, right? Whether you're like reading something monthly versus like reading it in trade, and this is just like a new way to read, I guess.
Substack is a super interesting. We'll probably get into that in a little more depth, because that's a conversation that's an interesting one to have, because it is new and it is a different kind of reading experience, and also it varies author to author, like all the different Substacks, the kind of content, the pace of content. It's so subjective to each individual creator that it's almost impossible to talk about on the whole anyway. But so these are true accounts or however.
Yeah, true. I mean, like, who really knows, right? Because I mean, it's some of it's pretty wild, because it's a lot of like, I guess maybe it's because this was like the first really widely publicized one, so it's got kind of a lot of like the classic sort of hallmarks of these alien abductions, is like, what this couple thinks happened to them. But it is kind of interesting, because then when you see like other accounts from people over the years, how they said that similar things happened, but it's like, is that just because they heard those things happen to other people? So I don't know, but it's interesting. I like it.
Tynion has this kind of fascination with the unknown, and it's interesting to see him approach it in different ways, from the fictionalized ways he's approached it in Department of Truth, and even Nice House on the Lake, to something which is purportedly based in reality.
Yeah.
I'm not subscribed to this, but the first increment is available for non-paid subscribers. So I've only read what amounts to like 8 pages of the story.
Yeah.
And like you said, Oming's art is always super
good,
specific and very cool. And the black, white, and blue palette is very, very, like, it sets a very specific tone.
It does.
I do feel like I wish I had another 8 pages to like hook me.
No, I get that. I don't think I was totally hooked by chapter 1.
And that kind of brings us to the Substack itself. I'm subscribed to Hickman and Snyder, and they're incredibly different experiences. The Hickman Substack is a comics writing workshop class where he does monthly lessons about writing comics, and a lot of background information about his process and things like that. And the Hickman, no comics at all though. And then the Hickman one, when I signed up for it, I thought was going to be a lot of comic, and it's been almost no comic, but it's a ton of process stuff. And I am a huge process nerd, especially for Hickman's approach. And getting to see like Del Mundo and Hiddleston's works in progress and like the different layers.
That's cool.
It's super interesting, but it's such an odd way to deliver comic content.
It is.
What do you think about the Substack experience so far?
Well, I'm only subscribed to Tynions, but I also recently, like just a few days ago, subscribed to the Brian K. Vaughan one, because I wanted to read his new book, and there's just, but it's the same thing, because like it's so few pages at a time, and like it definitely hooked me, although now the name of the book is like completely escaping me. But it's the only one up there. He's doing it with the same artist that worked on Pride of Baghdad, Nico Henrikon, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if I said that correctly, but their art is absolutely incredible. And I read, I think there's only 2 sections out so far, and I'm so hooked, but it's so little, and I really want to know what happens next.
And I guess that's how they're like, we're gonna get them.
Yeah, but I think the book is actually free, but I subscribed because I got really excited about more Brian K. Vaughan stuff. So
You do. I know that we're both big BKV fans.
Oh yeah.
You've worked in comic shops. You've been around the industry for a long time. You write about this kind of stuff. Do you think that this format is sustainable?
I don't know. That's interesting. It makes a lot of sense to me that so many writers seem to be like making the jump because, especially with the work for hire model becoming like less and less popular as time goes on, and rightfully so. And I know that creator owned just gives them so much more power over their own work. So I don't know how sustainable it is, but I think it makes a lot of sense that this is the direction that things are moving in. But I don't know. It does every time something like this happens, though, I start to feel like nervous for comic shops, though, because I mean, I guess comics aren't going anywhere, but so many people get them digitally now, which, nothing against people getting their comics digitally, but as you say, I worked in a comic shop. I worked in multiple comic shops, but I worked at Wade's for like 10 years. And I can't imagine a world without that comic shop in it. So, I worry about comic shops.
I'm super attached to the concept of brick and mortar local comic stores. So many of my favorite stories I've only discovered because of passionate employees at such shops.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, when I first was like getting into comics, the recommendations, because sure, I got Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore on my own, but like the recommendations that I got from comic book store employees were huge for me. That's how I got into and even with Alan Moore, I think it was a comic book store employee that recommended that I specifically read Swamp Thing, and that was like one of the best decisions I ever made. So, and just stuff I never would have picked up, like James Robinson's Starman. I remember I was in a comic shop and somebody that worked there wanted me to read it so bad he bought it for me and gave it to me. Yeah.
I love Starman.
It's so good. Oh my God. And Tony Harris's art, incredible. So good. So good.
And like you can't get that from, and like Comixology isn't going to exist in like 2 weeks or whatever, or September. I don't know when we are. But they're Amazon's doing like a more full merger over where they're taking down the Comixology website.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's like, look, Amazon's interface is already clunky as hell. I can't imagine this being a positive thing. But no one on that website is going to be able to be like, hey, what are some things that you like? And I will put a book in your hand that you'll love.
No, it's so true. It's so true. And that was one of my favorite things about working in a comic shop was like all the great customers we had and like, all the people that constantly just wanted new stuff to read and were really excited to hear recommendations about like what they should read. And, all of us working there got really pumped about helping people find new stuff.
I'd be really bummed if the industry takes that turn. I don't think it will, though, because I think that experience drives people to the stores more than...
I think so.
Yeah, like, I love keeping up with the stories, but I go to the store that I go to every Wednesday because I like talking with the owner for hours about books that came out that week, and creators that we love, and creators that we don't see eye to eye on, and seeing our different opinions on story and approaches and stuff, and that's what makes me passionate about the medium.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get that from a website.
No.
Also, for those who don't know what Substack is, Substack takes the Patreon model of like subscribing to directly support creators in exchange for tiered rewards and merges it with sort of like a newsletter delivery system where you get comics as a newsletter, but also actual newsletters. So there's not like a dedicated reader. There's no way to kind of like seamlessly go from, like, say you're trying to read 3 chunks of Blue Book, and there's no way to go seamlessly from that first chunk to that second chunk to that third chunk. Like, you have to keep...
Well, they have files that you can download if you want to. Yeah. They have files you can download if you want to read them in panel. Is it panel or panels? I have it and I don't remember, but
I'm not familiar with that app.
Yeah. I only became familiar with it because of Substack, because I was like, there has to be a better way to read these than the way that I am currently reading them. So yeah, you can download the files and you can open them in a reader.
I've been struggling to find, and like Tinians is at least like sorted well.
Mm-hmm.
but other ones aren't. And it's just like I'm just scrolling through like 35 newsletters trying to figure out where the last actual comic bit is in a sea of process and newsletter. And it's just like, comics by email is not a way I've ever wanted to read comics.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, the deal they give creators is hella sweet. They keep full control. They get a large percentage of their subscription money, and they get paid, I believe, from Substack directly.
Oh wow!
To create that content, at least like the higher tier ones. So it's like, and then they're able to take the comics that they make all this the money on through Substack, and then bring them to a physical publisher because they own those rights, and then release them as a physical comic later and make money again on them. And I totally understand why, as a creator, that's appealing. I just wish it was better to read with.
Yeah, I get that.
Bring this back to Blue Book really quick. It's a book about aliens. I want to ask you what you think about aliens.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't thought that much about it, to be honest. I mean, like, I was thinking about it more recently because I was reading this, but like, I don't know. I mean, don't they like have to exist?
There's so many, so like, it depends on what we describe as aliens, right? Because like, does other life somewhere have to exist? Maybe. Biologically, just mathematically, probably somewhere. But is that spacefaring, and is it coming here? And
I mean, like, do I think that, like, because it's funny because, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to give away, like, Blue Book spoilers, so I guess I'll just give away spoilers of every alien abduction story ever. But like, you know, in reading and thinking like, I wonder where people come up with this, like they were probing my body stuff, but then I was like, but I don't know, because like if you were an alien, maybe you would do some body probing, because you'd be like, what is all this stuff? I don't have that stuff. I don't know. Maybe. I
guess maybe. So
I mean,
funny.
like if I met an alien and they were like a Ken doll down there, I might probe the situation. I might be like, what is going on here? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, like not without consent.
Right, no, of course. I'm someone who's like, there's probably life out there. I just don't know why they'd be bumming around fucking Earth here. Like,
Sure.
You're like, oh, what are those zany humans up to now? Like, I don't want to be here. Why would they want to be here? In keeping with the kind of theme of space and aliens, the present book that I want to talk about is Radiant Black, one of my favorite comics of 2021. It made both my superhero and my overall best of lists.
I saw that.
And so if anyone's watched recent videos on this channel, there's a good chance they've heard me talk a little about Kyle Higgins and Marcelo Costa's Breakout Cape book. It's a fusion of Power Rangers and Invincible that has a specific sensibility oscillating between a humor based in quips and the brave incompetence of new power heroics, alongside kind of grounded motivations with interesting and relatable conversations around depression and unfulfilled potential. There's big lore teasing out across every issue. We've got aliens, space robots, and more, all drenched in Sentai-tron retrofuturism from Costa's character designs. There's epic battles, there's explosions, big, nice splash pages, but there's also thoughtful prose bits as our main character tries to push through his writing block and deliver on the future he's always seen for himself. And it's this balance that really sets Radiant Black among the best of the indie superhero comics. It captures a lot of what drew me to characters like Peter Parker and Kyle Rayner over the years, while growing its cast with equally well-informed and nuanced characters. We're treated to origin issues, sometimes featuring capable guest writers, that flesh out the other Radiants, and while it would be incorrect to say the cast is free of archetypes, there's some clever play and subversion of expectation that almost always lands. Costa is very much in his lane, delivering capable and classic superhero fare, but with some experimental form, incorporating panel breaks that accentuate the bold action. I won't lie, Higgins wasn't really on my radar before this book. I knew he had a background with Power Rangers comics, and I vaguely remember a Nightwing run. I gave his Darkhawk book a look, but none of these stories grabbed me like the universe of Radiant Black has. And it's officially a universe, the likes of which Image hasn't really had in quite some time, Spawn excluded. There's a crossover event coming, introducing new heroes Rogue Sun and Inferno Girl Red, and even a Radiant Red miniseries in the pipeline. So the future is pretty bright, and now is a great time to catch up because the second trade is on the way. And you said you haven't read this yet.
I have not, but I want to now.
You should read it. It's great. It's one of those books that the influences are worn right on the sleeve. It doesn't try to pretend to be something it's not. But there's just an understanding of what makes those stories work that's so well executed here. And it's become this huge, big enough hit where we're getting shared universes and creator-owned comics, which we don't see.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I think the last time that I can think of where there was like a running thing is like when Image tried to launch their new hero universe out of Invincible. They had like Tech Jacket going, and they brought Savage Dragon in.
Right.
I like the idea of these persistent worlds that still have these kind of big crossover events that feel more impactful than when they happen all the time in like a Marvel or a DC, because the universes aren't constantly resetting and these characters are allowed to change. And there's like real consequences to some of the fallout from things that happen in these issues that permanently change the premise or setup of the book. It's super good about using archetypes as a shorthand for world building and story acceleration. Like everyone's got some experience with like a Power Rangers-esque thing, and you see these specifically colored characters with a similar costume. You can skip ahead. You don't have to painfully tease out the origin story. It's like, yeah, we get it. We establish the characters more than the concept of superheroics, because everyone reading the book already knows what superheroics are and how these stories go. And in doing that, we're able to get into the meat and the interesting parts of the story all the faster.
I mean, I actually truthfully don't have like any Power Rangers experience.
You've never seen Power... See, this we have to talk about. How do you not have any Power Rangers experience?
Maybe it's my age. Maybe I was like a little too old for Power Rangers when they were a thing. I mean, although I do know people my age who were into Power Rangers, so I guess it's not just my age. I don't know. I've never seen it. I can't really. I mean, like I've seen, no, I've heard people talk about Power Rangers, I guess, is the best I've got. I don't know that much.
It was such a cultural touchstone for my childhood. I am blown away right now, but it does make sense that not everyone was born when I was. So, yeah. Get out of my own head, I guess.
No, I get it. It's really wild when like something that defined like a part of your life in such a huge way is something that somebody like. I learned recently that Jay had never seen A Clockwork Orange, and it like blew my entire mind because that was like a movie that I know I watched so many times as a teenager, which I recently rewatched it, and I'm really disturbed that I watched it so many times as a teenager.
Yeah, you get a whole different experience when I was young and I saw it. It was much more of that like, oh, this is wild, I'm a degenerate, and like now it's like, man, everyone in the story is awful, and it's just horrific. Oh my god. Yeah, I rewatched it because I wrote an article about how Stanley Kubrick basically like blinded Malcolm McDowell in that scene where his eyes were stuck open. Whoa. He I mean not like forever. He was blinded, briefly, but then he scratched his cornea. And then Stanley Kubrick was like, okay, but can we get another shot? Like he just like did not care. So that would not fly in today's
No, but neither would the way he worked with Shelley Duvall in The Shining either. That's so just a lot. Sorry, I didn't mean to detour onto
this whole thing's a detour. What are we doing here? That's such an interesting, because like, yeah, I take for granted all the foundational things that inform my opinions and understanding of the kinds of stories we talk about. And it's it's just like an automatic assumption that everyone's experienced that, and they just obviously haven't. It's a silly assumption.
Yeah. No, but I do the same thing. Like seriously, when he said he hadn't seen A Clockwork Orange, my mind was blown. I was like, wait, so not every teenager watched that movie again and again and again and like read the book multiple times? Not every teenager did that? I feel like if you were even like alternative kid adjacent, someone at some point would sit you down and force you to watch that in Rocky Horror. Yeah. He had never seen Rocky Horror either, although I remedied that. I remedied that, and now he sings the soundtrack right along with me. So I solved that problem.
Progress. It's just, I guess like people come from different experiences, but it's just it's so ingrained in me, because it would be like anytime you meet a different group of people, they'd be like, have you seen this? Like, yeah, of course I've seen this.
Yeah.
And we're gonna watch it again. I'm like, I know we are. Oh man. So looking to the future, what upcoming release are you excited for?
So I was talking about Mike's book, but now I'm going to talk about his wife's book also, because he's married to my friend Taki Soma, and she has her own book coming out in July, I believe. And Taki and I go way back as well. We both used to work at Wade's together many, many years ago. And then they both moved to the other side of the country, and I miss them terribly. But yeah, Taki's book is called Sleeping While Standing. It's releasing through Avery Hill Publishing. But I think one of the coolest things about it is that Taki wrote it, she drew it, she colored it, and she lettered it. Like, she did everything herself. It's a bunch of autobiographical stories, and I think she challenged herself to tell each one in 4 pages or less, which I think is pretty neat. And Taki's lived this like amazing life. She's been through so much. She's pretty much the most badass chick I know. I got this little blurb about the book that they wrote down because I thought it could explain it better than me. In the book, Taki leads us through her early childhood in Japan in the 80s to moving to Minnesota, the separation of her parents, childhood trauma, teenage angst, death, drugs, comics, health issues, love, fertility, pets, and zombies. All of life is here in this book. So I'm just like really looking forward to it. She's worked on books like Bitch Planet and Synergy, but I just think this is a chance for her to really shine and show everybody what she's capable of. And I just can't wait to read it. She's one of my favorite people, and I'm just super psyched to read the book.
I'm not usually an autobiographical comics fan, except that I just read a Jack Kirby biography comic, and now I didn't appreciate the idea of translating that kind of real world stuff into and like now it's like, of course that makes, again, it's like any other kind of medium, of course it makes sense.
Yeah,
like that's a surefire winner. I'm excited for that now too.
No, I can't wait to read. And I was lucky enough that she shared like a couple pages with me here and there, like throughout the process, which just was incredible. It made me feel so good that she was willing to do that. But it just also got me so much more excited about it, because it was just like a couple pages. And I was like, oh my God, when am I going to get to read this? When am I going to get to read this? But now it's not that far off. It's July.
Avery Hill, Sleeping While Standing.
Sleeping While Standing by Taki Soma. Yep.
All right. I'll definitely be keeping that on my radar. I want to wrap up this episode for me by highlighting DC Black Label's upcoming 4-issue prestige series, Rogues.
Okay.
So the jokes about Black Label leaning so hard into like Gotham and Batman are numerous. Like, it's really, you can make the same joke for basically the whole DC publishing line, or it's just like Batman and a few friends. But Williamson and Leomax Rogues takes us to Center City for a dark, noir-y heist, as Flash's most recognizable villains come out of retirement for one last score. DC clearly has a lot of faith in Williamson. He's spearheading their latest crisis, which I couldn't care less about, but like, if you're writing an event book, and an event book of that magnitude, DC clearly thinks you have the chops. And he's taken over on Batman from Tynion. I'm a fan of his creator-owned Ode to Slasher, his Nailbiter.
Okay.
And he kind of balances atmosphere well. He's got a winking kind of morbid humor also. And Leomax's work on Basket Full of Heads has a classic comics feel that I imagine will lend pulp sheen to this darker crime tale. So this is easily one of the Black Label books I've been most excited for in recent memory. There's a deep appreciation in some buried crevice of my soul for the goofier concept villains and their unusual code going up against the fastest man alive with nothing but silly tech and gumption. And like, although I know many people are tired of these like gritty takes, there's a lot of undertapped potential in these second stringers. They're working class crooks in a de facto union just trying to ply their trade. And also Gorilla Grodd's in this, so how could it not be a blast?
True.
Rogues #1 comes out March 22nd.
Oh, that's soon. Okay.
Yeah. It's a good thing we did this episode.
I've read not that many of the Black Label stuff, but the ones I have read I really liked a lot. There's some pretty good ones.
I think that almost to a book, the the freedom and the like the creators they bring in for those have been really solid. The Lemire's Green Hell, the Swamp Thing book,
Really like
came out
that.
recently, super cool. There was a really good question series, but I forget who did the creative work on that.
Ooh, I didn't read that one.
It's really solid. There, Harleen was really cool.
Oh, I loved Harleen. I loved it. And Wonder Woman Historia, that's Black Label, right?
Black Label, that blew my mind.
That art was like just I can't I don't have enough words. I don't have enough words to like elucidate my feelings on that art. It was amazing.
Jimenez snapped on that. Like it's the fine detail of every, like the whole page is just this, like every page. So
every
intricate.
page.
So the color work is incredible and immaculate. The only thing I didn't like about that book is there is an amazing double page spread that the way the book is divided fucks up the art. And it drove me crazy because it's so cool and it's unavoidable. It's part of how books are. I guess if it's digital, maybe you don't have that. But I was like, how could you do this to him? And then even like the story of that, like I'm not usually a huge Wonder Woman fan. The story in that was awesome. Like
Have you read Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman run? I
don't think so.
Because then you would be a Wonder Woman fan.
I'm not a Wonder Woman hater. They're not the Fantastic Four.
You're wrong about them too. But
I'm
anyway,
not. It's okay though.
You're wrong about them anyway. But no, I didn't read Greg Rucka's Rebirth run, but I'm going to. It's on my very long list of stuff. But his Wonder Woman run from the early 2000s is like what got me into Wonder Woman. And I think he was actually writing Superman at the same time. And it's kind of what got me into Wonder Woman and Superman, because I really was not a Superman fan before that.
I find that in my older age, I have grown. Yeah, I know. I've grown a more a deeper appreciation for Superman, and the metaphor of Superman, but also Superman stories where Superman isn't just hitting someone really hard, rule, and like that approach to superheroics and that the nobility that's sort of entrenched in his moral character. I think every year I get like more and more of an appreciation for that. And I'm really enjoying Tom Taylor's take on his son in Superman, Son of Kal-El.
I want to read that. I haven't read that yet.
He's drawing a lot of really interesting parallels to Superman in a modern era. He set up a cool cast of characters, but it's focusing more on those kinds of stories where it's not like supervillain get punched. It's global warming is a problem. What is an all-powerful single man to do about that, and how can he more directly help? And the answer is in a lot of ways he can't.
Yeah.
And it brings a lot of fresh blood and ideas into that kind of realm. Who wrote the New 52 Wonder Woman?
New 52. Oh, it was Brian Azzarello.
It was Brian Azzarello.
That stuff was good too.
I really enjoyed at least the first 3 volumes of that.
No, it was good. I really liked his run. I thought it was really good. And I was already like a big Wonder Woman fan at that point, so I was prepared to be disappointed, but I really liked it. I thought it was a really interesting take on the character.
Yeah, and it the sort of some of the retconning they did in that book kind of streamlined Wonder Woman as a character, got rid of some of the forced American iconography and replaced it with a deeper commitment to mythology, which I really dug.
Yeah, because I definitely like I realized over the years that I tend to like not follow characters at all. I pretty much like just follow writers and artists because I think like a good writer can pretty much I think there's probably not like a single team or character that I haven't read like at least like one really good run on.
Fantastic Four.
No, Mark Waid.
Jokes aside, I have committed to giving them another chance.
Mark Waid and also Hickman.
So I've heard great things about both of those. I remember picking up when they were both coming out, respectively. I remember like giving it a look because I love Mark Waid and I adore Hickman. I think Hickman is has done for comics in the last 5 years what most writers never achieve, and the way that even data pages have become so integrated in books he's not on, and that prose pages have become more acceptable, and his entire long form structuring of story is really interesting. He just has a very interesting brain for storytelling.
Mark Waid is what got me into them. I mean, like, just what he did for the character of Doctor Doom alone, just like super, super interesting. Really, really good.
I just read a really cool Doom series from Chris Cantwell.
Oh, yeah?
Came out, I think, in 2019 or 2019, 2020. Like, it's pretty new.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of got me to be like, maybe Fantastic Four, I'll give it another shot.
Yes.
That and like, I've always thought all their villains are really hokey, but then this TV series that just came out also got me to reform my opinion on Kang. Because that was super cool, and it created a really interesting pathos for his character. So maybe you're right. This is me on camera committing to Mark Waid's Fantastic Four run.
Yes.
And that's a great place as any to kind of wrap this up. Jamie, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
And as always, thanks to all the people watching and talking about these books in the comments and messages. Support your local comic shops. Shout out to Final Boss Comics and Games and Wade's Comic Madness for holding me down on New Comic Book Day. Support the books and creators you love. Thanks to Ray Ray Beats for our intro music. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications on new episodes. Jamie, what do you have to plug?
I mean, I think you said it at the beginning of the episode that I, write articles for Slashfilm and some other sites also, and I'm currently on the Real Effin Nerds podcast. Also, everyone should read Sandman.
A plug for a book that came out in 1989. Excellent. You can talk comics with me on Twitter at Griffin Talks, where I'm usually posting quick impressions and reviews on weeklies and trades as I get to them. I'm also giving away 4 copies of The Many Deaths of Layla Starr in trade on my Best of 2021 video. Link below or above. I don't really know.
Thanks for getting me to read that book.
Thank you for reading it.
It was so good.
And yeah, so four people we selected at random to win that full series. And it's a super great book. It blends art and story in a way that elevates both. It's got a real fresh style to it that I think is going to touch a lot of people who check it out. So the winners for that are going to be selected at random, like I said, on February 28th. Next episode, Floyd, the owner and operator of Final Boss Comics and Games in Lawrence, New Jersey, will be joining me. Dude is an absolute blast to talk comics with. I lose literally hours every Wednesday with him, so it's going to be a good one. Until then, happy reading, everyone.